beautiful people, and welcome. In today's video, we are going to be talking about the steps to take when writing column proofs for triangle congruence. I will perhaps do one example in this video, but this video is mainly to talk about what are the requirements of a triangle congruence proof, what are the hints I can give you, what are some cheats I can give you. And before we get too far, disclaimer time, I am human, so if I make a mistake, I do apologize. Mistakes are a fact of life. So if you catch a mistake, if I make a mistake and you catch that mistake, just let me know where the mistake occurs so that way I can fix it and we both can learn from my mistake. All right, let's get started. So a column proof is a column. It looks like a really big T-chart. And a proof is just reason, or reasons, plural, why things happen. So there are reasons why things happen. Now, when we're doing our column proofs, we're going to have that T-chart, we're going to have reasons. But specifically, why are we doing this is to prove that two triangles are congruent. So our objective when we are doing these column proofs is to prove that two triangles are congruent. And again, if you recall what congruent means equal in measure. So essentially what we're doing when we're doing these column proofs for triangle congruence is we're proving that two triangles are equal in measure, also known as we're proving that two triangles are the same. Exactly the same. They are equal in measure, meaning their measurements are all the same for all of the angles, all of the sides, everything. It's like we take copy and we paste. Okay? So there are reasons why things happen, and there are reasons why things don't happen, obviously. So when we're working with these column proofs, let's talk about the requirements. To start off a column proof, you have your T-chart. And the first requirement is that you have to label your T-chart. On the left-hand side, you're going to write statements. And on the left-hand side, you're going to write reasons. That's your first requirement. Your second requirement is that the first thing you write, besides when you label your T-chart, the first reason, so here's the first requirement. The second requirement is the first statement and reason are given. Literally, for the reason part, you're going to write given. And for the statement part, and you're always going to use a number next to it. I'll show you how. For the statement part, you're going to look at the given section of the problem Okay, so you're going to look at the given section of the problem and copy what is given. Now, sometimes they're going to give you a ton of information, and when they do, you're doing a mini happy dance in your head. But sometimes they'll give you statements that are separated with commas. If they do that, you're going to separate each statement with its own number. And for each of those statements, your reason is still given. So for example, if they tell you that segment AB is congruent to segment CD, well, how do you know those two segments are equal in measure? Well, because they told me. So the reason is, we can't really write, it'd be very informal, they told me so. So we're going to go a little bit more formal on our reasons and write given. So far, what do we have? We have a statement and a reason column. After that, we're going to write what our statements are, and we're going to write what our reason is, which is given. How do we know? It's given. What do we know? Statement. Okay, so far, that's what we have. So how does it look overall? So here's our T-chart. We have our statement and our reason column. Then we're looking at our statement, whatever that statement is, and our reason is given. If you have more than one statement, for example, if it is separated by a column, if it is separated by a comma, you give it its own number. So you can have as many different givens, as many as they give you. You cannot write given unless they tell you that information. So remember, if the given information has a comma, give it its own number. Now the statement and the reason number must match. So let's add that in. For example, if statement 1 is A, B, and C, D are congruent, how do we know it's given? So these two have to match. The statement and reason number must match. Okay, again, let's recap. I'm going to recap a lot with these steps. Step number 1, you're going to make a T-chart. On the left-hand side, you're going to write statement. On the right-hand side, you're going to write reason. For step number 2, you're going to look at the section of the problem and copy what is given. We'll do an example and you'll see they literally say given, semicolon, and they give you information. You're looking at that section. For the reason of these statements, you're literally writing given. How do you know? Because they told me so. To write that formally, we're writing the word given. So if, for example, they give you 3 statements that are separated with commas, you are writing 1, 2, 3. Each statement gets its own number. Each statement gets its own reason. Okay? So now we are going into the meat of the problem. We have the beginning. Now we're going to the middle before we go to the end. So for the middle part of the proof, so after you have written, let me shift this a little bit, all of your given statements, You're going to do two things. Step number one, again, this is after you have written down all of your given statements. So you are basically having something like this. So let's call it 3 since the other I had 1, 2, now let's 3. You're going to mark up your image. What that means is they will always give you a picture of 2 triangles, and that's what you're trying to prove. You're trying to prove that those 2 triangles are the same. So you're going to mark up your image. Let me change colors here. So you're going to use the given information. To note important info on the given image. For example, so you're going to mark if angles are congruent. You're going to mark if sides are congruent. Basically, you're going to mark whatever they tell you to mark. And that's going to be located in the given section. Okay, so step number 3, you're going to mark up your image. Now, sometimes you will hear me in my videos tell you that step number 1 is mark up your image. That's okay. As long as you mark up your image before you move on to step number 4, you're fine, okay? But you must mark up your image. Use the given information to note important information on the given image. So use the given information to note the important info. That seems like a tongue twister. But ultimately, you're going to mark whatever they tell you to mark in the given section. You're going to look in the given section and say, hey, this is what they tell me. This is what I'm going to mark down. Sometimes it's going to be angles. Sometimes it's going to be sides. Sometimes it's going to be a midpoint. I'm going to put a ... here because there can be so much more that they tell you, but whatever it is, you're going to mark it. Okay, now step number 4. Now that you have your image marked up, you have your reason and statement columns, you have your reasons and statements. You have those written down. You're going to move on to step number 4. And you're going to look for key words in your in your statement column. So these keywords will tell you why things are what they are. For example, if you see the keyword midpoint, that means that the next statement should be using what the midpoint is. So if you have a keyword of midpoint, that means a segment gets cut in half. That means 2 smaller segments are equal. So, for example, if you have on a triangle, they say L is the midpoint, then you're going to say that L is the midpoint. Let me change colors. Let's call this A and B. So again, if you see the word midpoint, that means a segment gets cut in half. For this example, that means AB gets cut in half. That means that A and L and B are equal in measure, which means that segment AL and segment LB are congruent. And how do you know that? Because of this keyword, you're going to write definition of midpoint. Okay, so how would that look like in your T-chart? Let's do an example. So here's your statements. Here's your reasons. So if they tell you, let's say they tell you M is the midpoint of AB, how do you know that? It is given to us. They tell us that. So you see how you have this, let me see if I have a highlighter here, this keyword midpoint. That means the next thing that you have to do, and again, the numbers might be different, but the next thing that you have to do is now say what came out of the midpoint. We know that L is the midpoint, therefore AL is congruent to LB. How do you know? Well, because L is the midpoint, meaning this got cut in half, meaning we use the definition of a midpoint. Again, what do we know? Segment AL is congruent to segment LB. How do we know that? By the definition of midpoint. Notice that I have a statement with the keyword midpoint, and we have a reason with the keyword midpoint. They have to follow each other. If you do not have the keyword midpoint, you cannot use the reason definition of midpoint. These have to match up. If they don't match up, they can't go together. Right, so that is one keyword. Another keyword that you're going to use, it's more like you're going to see than you're going to write. What I mean by that is another keyword is it's called the reflexive property. The reflexive property just means you got the same side twice. So when you look at your image, let me draw one real quick. Sometimes you're going to see, here's one triangle, here's another triangle, here's Q and R, here's your T-chart. When I say that this one you don't really write, you're going to write this reflexive property, but you're going to use this keyword in your reasons. This information they give you, but, keyword but, They don't tell you directly. You have to visually see that those two segments are congruent. So reflexive property is your reason. And so what does the reflexive property mean? What does it give you? Well, it means you got the same side twice. So if I were to, let me get a sheet of paper here. If I were to cover this triangle up, let's label this, I don't know, S. So triangle SQR and triangle TQR both share the same side. So you have the same side twice. So if I was to rewrite it, you have triangle SQR and you have triangle TQR. Both of these triangles share this side. So meaning if you were to flip these triangles over, this side would be the same side twice. So how do we write that? Well, if you have the same side twice, what do we know about its measure? It's the same side. So it's the same measure. So you're going to write QR segment is congruent to QR. It's the same thing. Well, how do you know? You can't just write that it's the same thing. You have to give it a mathematical reason. And the mathematical reason is that it's called a reflexive property. So mark it up. One thing I have not mentioned yet. Here's your first thinking bubble. With each statement, you're going to add marks to your given image. Okay, with each statement, add marks to your given image. Okay, so now we have a midpoint. We now have a reflexive property. What else can we do? What else? What other reasons? There's lots of many reasons. So if you go back to my original, I believe it's in the side, angle, side video. You can find all of them listed there. And I'm just going to go through, believe one more. Let's do one more. Yeah, let's do one more. Another keyword, and again, this one you're going to see as well, is the vertical angles. And those are angles, congruent angles, that are across from each other. Again, how does it typically work? Here's your statement. Here's your reason. This is your reason. How do you know? It's because they are vertical angles. What do you know? Here are your two triangles. Angles that are across from each other are congruent. So that means, and this is a little bit weird because let's say we have the triangle that's called A, B, C, D, E, C. You cannot say that C is congruent to C because that's just weird. So you're going to actually have to label your angle. So start with one triangle and then go to the other triangle. And the angle has to be in the middle. So you're going to say angle BCA is congruent to angle DCA. The angle that is congruent has to be in the middle. So how do you know that these two angles are equal in measure, that are the same? We know this because of they are vertical angles. Okay, so how do we know it? Because they are vertical angles. Again, these are just the most common. There are more. So if you don't see yours on here, I want to state again, these are not all of the reasons. These are not all of the key words. These are just some of them. All right. Now we're going on to step number 5. We've had our beginning. These are some of the reasons for our middle. And then let's go towards the ending. You're going to, let me shift this. You're going to end each proof with your given, let's not say given, with your given proof statement. So in a problem, in a question, you're going to see this. You're going to see, let's say, question. Let's see if I can spell question. Let's do question number 1. You're going to see given, and you're going to see something, comma, something, and then you're going to see proof. And you're going to see proof triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF. This proof statement is always going to be your last statement in your proof. So when you have your statement and reasons, you have something here, 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 you have your reasons, and then you're going to say triangle ABC is congruent to triangle DEF, and that's going to be your very last line. And then you're going to, whatever number this is, you're going to have that same number here, and you're going to give your reason. Okay, step number 6, and the very last step, you're going to end each proof with one of the following reasons. So how do you know that these two triangles are congruent? Well, because we are learning about ways that triangles can be congruent, and we're kind of talking about the least amount of information we can actually have about triangles to actually know that they are congruent. Okay, if we have, and even before I mention these, I'm going to do a thinking bubble. Easiest way to know which one to use. Look at your markings. And match the order. And I'll show you the example. Let's see if I turn on the light, will it be? That doesn't work. Kind of better. You guys can kind of see that a little bit better. I apologize if something was not clear earlier. Okay, so the easiest way to know which one to use, you're going to look at your image. So you have been, with every single statement, you have been marking up your image. And so now at the end, you have all of your markings. And so one of your reasons could be side, side, side. One of your reasons could be side, angle, side. One of your reasons could be angle, side, angle. One of your reasons could be angle, angle, side. One of your reasons could be HL, or hypotenuse leg. Let's write these out. This is side, side, side. And what that means, again, is all three sides correspond to all three sides to the other triangle, and each corresponding side is congruent. Therefore, two triangles are congruent. Next one is we have side, angle, side. That means two sides and the angle in between those two sides match up with two sides and the angle in between. They are congruent. Angle, side, angle, and then angle, angle, side. And this is hypotenuse. And leg. So for example, again, here's an example. If you have two triangles, let's call this one A, B, C, D. And in the end, you get the following markings. So this is what you see at the end. This angle is given to you. This angle is given to you. These angles are also given to you. You know this is the reflexive property because it is the same side twice. This is what you see in the end. You have three pieces of information, so you have to match them up. So what do you have? What does that mean? I have an angle, angle, side. I have an angle, angle, side. So for this one, I'm looking for an angle, angle, side. There it is. So these two triangles are congruent. So how would you write this? Here's your statement. Here's your reasons. So you have all of your information. You have all of your reasons. At the end, you're going to say triangle A, B, C is congruent to triangle D, A, S. Where did we get this information? Look at step number 5. It's going to be in the proof section. And then how do we know? Whatever this number is, how do we know? We know this because of angle, angle, side, angle, side. So we know this because of angle, angle, side. And that's it. The end of your proof. Sometimes you're going to see teachers do a box to say, hey, you're done. Sometimes you're going to see at the end, you're going to write QED. In my class, whenever you stop writing, I'm assuming that's the end of your proof. So you do not have to write the box or QED. If you choose to, you can. Some teachers do require you to write that. All right, you guys, this wraps up this video. I hope that it has been educational, informative, helpful. As always, if you catch a mistake, I apologize for this. This is not the complete everything that you need to know about writing triangle proofs in the form of a column proof. There are many more examples that you're going to come across that have things that are not mentioned in this video, but I do hope that this helps introduce you to what the proofs should look like. As always, thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, hit that little bell, you know what to do, and then I will see you in my next video. Thank you for watching.